And thank you so much for coming. It's really a thrill to be here and be able to share with you some of the work that I've done over the last few years. Thanks to Luthiers for hosting us. Thank you so much to Allison for inviting me and for organizing tonight. I'm going to share with you 4 different authors tonight. I'm going to start by introducing myself with a few original poems, and I'll follow that with poems by 3 different Danish writers. Sorry, I'm still working on getting this thing quite right. There we go, that might work. So first, a few original poems. Clearing ice dams. Did you know that ice dams a foot thick can form on roof eaves in New England, leaking water places it ought not to go? Drywalled ceilings, bedroom walls, wooden floors, and the repairs we calculate in our heads late at night, the temperature outside hovering around 20. So what do? Some people call me. I know how to raise a ladder on snow and ice to the roof, icicles hanging in deadly draperies from every gutter. I can climb up onto a snowy, icy roof, hopefully not too steep, or I'll have to get my rope and harness. With shovels, pry bars, hammers, I test clear a snowy patch of roof upwards from the eave until the thick ice at the gutter tapers off to just snow on shingles. Then I slice and shovel through the club sandwich of ice and snow strata, the entire length of the roof, arms working like pistons, pitching wintry mix over the precipice. And for this, I moved to New England. Then I attack the bottommost ice with pounding hammers, using the flat shovel to get under the dam, lift it, sometimes breaking off tiny ice splinters, sometimes 100-pound ice logs that slide and plummet to that surprisingly brutal law of gravity and crash below. So careful there. When that last ice bomb has hit is perhaps the most dangerous few seconds of all. That slow step onto the snow-slick ladder from the roof edge. But after that, a piece of cake. Tools down, ladders down, repack the van, set the wet gloves on the dashboard vents, and be thankful for how good my muscles feel. The crisp, rejuvenating air, peaceful winter vistas. For this, I moved to New England. Saw a lot of ice dams today. This next poem is called To a Healing Woman. It's written for my wife Yetta, who is also a physical therapist for infants. To a Healing Woman. There is a remarkable moment when she steps in from the brightness, in shorts and soil-darkened fingers, to the twilight of the entry hall, where I barely exist except for my eyes and a feeling at the pit of my stomach. They're just the plants that need to be moved out front because they're unexpectedly too tall, where they need more sun. However she judges the situation, that is how it must be. Try to keep water from running over rocks. It goes where it has to. I watch and listen and stand aside. Here comes someone beautiful who has no idea. Hair hanging like casual lightning on brown eggshell shoulders. Earth Mama goes barefoot all summer. Get it while you can. But when soil-darkened toes. Oh, she needs something. Sure, I'll get it. From me, she needs things. But when a parent and infant need her, because the baby's not crawling yet, where the neck is a little twisted, and is it really that bad? Sometimes it is unexpectedly much worse. Her arrival is a subtle shift in place. Toys or decoys for hands, providing more sun. She sits with a precious preemie next to worried mother's eyes, holding like the earth. Heart-filled hands go where they need to go, to remind the baby so gently of wholeness. Sometimes there's not nearly enough sun, and a bigger baby just lies there. And the parent hardly seems to know, and she's down on the floor patting the light into it. Those babies get subtly cajoled into themselves, like late acorns suddenly remembering spring and sprouting. Try to walk into a day and notice. I do not know how she does this. Insufficiencies abound. She puts her hands here. It's better. Of course, there is no end. This does not matter. Each one thing is connected to the rest of the universe. The new me.
Wait a minute.
Last poem of mine, this is called The New Me. The other evening, I had just finished writing down a quote from some Buddhist teacher about making requirements in a relationship into preferences. And there we sat silently on the sofa. Suddenly I felt this tectonic shift in my crusted surfaces. A chink opened, admitting light. A realization that, though I had professed for years to loving you unconditionally, that actually I did have conditions, requirements, up to my ears. That you adore me. That you put me first in all things. That you show me with kisses 1,000 times each day. That you appear as a perfect wife. That you are on the spot to stroke my flagging ego without needing to be asked. And as the new me sat there, confessing, making you cry, it dawned on me that you had been having an affair, in plain sight, for years, with this new me. And furthermore, that you were not the woman I thought I wanted, that you would never be her, that you would always love this perpetually newer me who exists above, beyond, in some other dimension you perceive. Some me that makes me look bad, though not completely hopeless. Some me that I without a doubt never could even begin to approach to live up to without your unfailing presence. Thank you. So now begins the translation part of the evening. I'm going to start with reading poetry by a rural poet. A rural poet from Denmark, Knud Sørensen. He's 85 years old, and he's written 48 books. Last year he won the equivalent of our Pulitzer Prize in Denmark. And he wrote extensively about farming communities, and the loss of family farms that happened in Denmark just as it did in the United States. I'm going to start with some Danish, and then I'll move into the English. Såtid, måneder hvor meget tærsklen kørte, ligger volde af udbanket halm. Han sætter i ly med en brændende tot på en hytøv. Han antænder marken, han løber frem og tilbage. Han synger ilten fra stribe til stribe, og flammerne tordner hen over marken. Solen bliver sløret og stor og sintrer på himlen, og aske og støv driver hen over jorden. This is the same poem. Planting time months before. Windrows of threshed hay lie where the combine drove. He starts running with a burning clump on a pitchfork. He ignites the field, running back and forth. He tosses the fire from row to row, and the flames thunder across the field. The sun blurs, hanging, quivering in the sky, and ash and dust drift over the ground. His face turns black, and streaked with sweat splashing down over his face. He runs, the flames jump, he shouts at the fire, he jeers and rages, and the air fills with smoke. it gets dark. Dark. He runs across the field, lungs burning, following the flames, dripping with sweat and covered with ash and dust. He breathes and gasps, arms and legs painful appendages. He keeps going, heavily, but keeps going. The flames die, and he stops. Walks slowly towards home, trailing the stench of burnt land behind him. He sits one day on a tractor plowing that scorched field, then goes and waits through the winter for planting time. Winter day with snow. Already before daybreak, he notices that the ground is white, a weaker darkness behind the bedroom curtains. And he turns on the light and gets up and pulls back the curtain, and the farmyard is more visible than usual, and the light reflected more strongly than before. And he gets dressed, walks across the soft farmyard to the morning milking, to the feeding, and the mucking out. When he reemerges to the farmyard, the sun is up, and it's shining, and the sky is blue, and the land is still white. The frost has hollowed out the air, so you think you can breathe in all space without getting filled. And everything is still white. The farmyard, the roofs, the garden, and the fields that almost disappear. And suddenly he knows what he has to do on a day like this. After coffee, he drives out the tractor, gets the liquid manure tank, primes the pump, so its sound becomes full and inescapable. And all day long he drives across the fields, coloring them brown again. It's good to have livestock. It's good to have 1,000 gallons of liquid manure on a day like this. Good to fill this frozen void with a heavy and fertile smell. He smiles. Now they are cursing him in all the cars up there on the road. Foreclosure. Ola Andersen disappears. Ola Andersen sits in his kitchen. It is a quiet noontime. The sounds are the clock's movement, the hum of the refrigerator, and the drip of the hot water faucet. Ola Andersen is listening for another sound, from the sunshine, from the newly fallen snow that clearly shows that he has been in the barn twice this morning. Now he listens. Now he just sits and listens. The sound arrives. The sound is driving on 4 wheels into the farmyard, turns, stops in front of the door, and out steps the lawyer, and out steps the sheriff with the foreclosure book in his hand. And Ola Andersen rises, goes through his kitchen, through his utility room, out his door, and is no longer Ola Andersen, but Defaulter. Defaulter greets them quietly. Defaulter hears the ballpoint pen drown out the sheriff's voice when it is entered in the record book that the sheriff delivered papers on the 19th of January, 1981 at 1:45 p.m., executing petition from the Danish Farmers Credit Union regarding bankruptcy of the property, registry number 42B, Tuving City, Gautorp, foreclosure. "We have to take a look around," says the sheriff. The door to the machine shed is open. One tractor, make Volvo, year 1974, red. Sheriff makes a note of it. One tractor, make Ferguson, year 1956. Sheriff makes a note of it. One baler, make Ferguson, nearly new. Sheriff makes a note of it. One double plow, make Skjol. Sheriff makes a note of it and lets his gaze fall on various hand tools. A single rubber boot, a wreck of a work wagon, a can of oil. And the lawyer shakes his head, and the sheriff shakes his head. Then they walk over to the livestock building. "One sow with 8 piglets, says the lawyer, and the sheriff makes a note of it. "One sow with 10 piglets, says the lawyer, and the sheriff makes a note of it. 1 sow with 8 piglets, says the lawyer. 9, says defaulter. They count. 1 sow with 9 piglets, says the lawyer, and the sheriff makes a note of it. 1 sow with ear tag number 213, 1 sow, 2 market hogs, 6 feeder pigs, says the lawyer, and the sheriff makes a note of it. Nothing encumbered with lien, thus it is carried out. Foreclosure completed. They go out into the yard. That was that, says the sheriff. Won't you have a cup of coffee? Asks defaulter, trying to regain his lost identity. My wife isn't around, but won't you have a cup of coffee? And the sheriff smiles and shakes his head and says that they're busy, you know, they have other cases waiting. And he nods goodbye. And the lawyer nods goodbye. And they get in their car and start it up and drive away. Defaulter stands watching them go. Then he goes inside. Defaulter sits down at the kitchen table that Ole Andersen left behind. Thank you. The next poet of the evening is our only female poet of the evening. Her name is Marianne Koluda Hansen, and she died a year ago at the age of 63 as an unknown writer in Denmark. She had written several books, but back in the late 70s. I was fortunate enough to discover her work and reach her just days before she died, where she gave me permission to translate her work. I'll start with the Danish and then move into the English. Fredag aften i Irma. De har alle sammen nogen at komme hjem til. Jeg kan se det på deres indkøbsvogne, som buner af tryghed, samhørighed og trivsel. Hundemad og tv-guf, lørdagslæg på ungerne, 2 liter vin og bagerkartofler, kæmpe økonomi og familiepakker. Friday evening in Acme. All of them have someone to come home to. I can tell by their shopping carts that are bulging with security, belonging, and well-being. Neck chops on sale, dog food and munchies, weekend candy for the kids, a half-gallon of wine and baking potatoes, giant economy and family packs, diapers and French cheeses, heavy worn-down women with knit caps and striped bags, brand new mothers and bearded men, authoritative wives and young couples, some without coats so you can tell there's a car waiting out there. And they all have someone to come home to. And here I come with a pint of low-fat yogurt and half a rye bread, naked as you only can be Friday evening in Acme. It is embarrassing not being loved, and all of them can see it. They don't believe that my husband is just on a trip and the kids with the grandparents for the weekend. I leave the line, grab a couple of steaks, a good bottle of wine, and a large rye bread. 3 pairs of men's socks, a dozen eggs, 2 bags of cookies, 10 condoms, 4 pacifiers, 40 diapers, a half-gallon of milk, and a bottle of aftershave, and a pack of frozen unpeeled shrimp. It's going to be expensive. And then I've got to stand in line again. It's totally crazy. But it doesn't matter. Now it's like it's easier to look people in the eye. Thank you. All of her poems are coming out of various journals here and there. Kiss the Frog. You are never really grown up until you have accepted that child you once were and lovingly taken it in. I would love to be grown up, stable, and decisive, but every time I stand looking in there, where those who dare to lie in the dark are drinking dry martinis and dancing on the beach and making decisions for the rest of us, I am stopped at the door by a little girl with greenish freckles and an ugly nose. And I know I have to kiss her to be able to enter. She has a milk mustache and bad breath, and I get nauseous. No, I can't do it. I push her so she falls and hurts her clumsy knees as usual, and the gateway closes one more time, and I am not transformed. I have read in a magazine that when you're like this, you shouldn't have children. Because when you recognize your own despised self in your children, you can't love them, and that causes them not to love themselves either, or their children, and so on. Actually, I wasn't going to have children. But then when he suddenly arrived anyway, with a miniature version of that sorrowful nose that poisoned so many of my teenage days, and there was also something about the eyes. A little warm explosion occurred inside me, and I kissed him right between his nose and his eyes, out of love for both of us. At the same time, it is as if a little girl with greenish freckles and an ugly nose is lying snug in bed, and her mom gives her a little hug before kissing her goodnight. The organism's function. My hideous lizards provide fertilizer for the roses and the thyme I have gotten to bloom in your sewers. So next time you break your ankle and wrist and collarbone because you trip over my clogs that I left lying out in the middle of the floor, remember then that you love me precisely for my breathless eagerness and spontaneity and ability to forget everything around me. And next time I ask you to shop for a cheap dinner, and you come home with T-bone steaks and Danish tomatoes and red wine Appellation Contrôlée and burnt figs and cognac and snails and garlic butter, then I will remember that your outrageous extravagance is a function of your sparkling optimism that I could not live without, when the fear of the future oppresses me and makes me want to hoard things. You are a necessary midsummer night's dream by which I warm myself when the cold April rain has flattened my daffodils. And I have realized that if I spray your mosquito larvae, I will also kill a songbird that I have fallen in love with. The last poet of the evening is Benny Andersen. He's 85 years old, the best-selling and best-known poet in Denmark. I'm fortunate enough to work with him for several years and had his work published all over the country. And I've also produced audiobooks of all these poets with me reading them. One is for sale tonight, the one by Marianne. The two others will be out in a few weeks. If you're interested, you can put your email address down on a sign-up sheet over by Allison, and I'll save one for you. That's Benny. Start with the Danish. Mandag. Hvorfor er det altid mandag om mandag? Ikke bare mandag morgen. Også om en eftermiddag og hele aftenen. Man kan mærke det lige fra man vågner. Den er gær. For sent i skole, for sent på arbejde, og de skal ud. De ser skævt til en. De har så store øjne, kræfter så meget op om mandagen, hvor man mindst kan tåle. Monday. Why is it always Monday on Mondays? Not just Monday morning, also in the afternoon and all evening. You can tell from the moment you wake up, this is bad. Late to school, late to work, and they yell at you. Look at you sideways. Their eyes get real big. They make such a big deal out of it on Mondays when you least can bear it. They get you to feel so small on Mondays. at least a head smaller, not to mention your mood, which is about 2 inches tall. You'll need some pretty good stilts if anyone is going to notice that. Why do you have such big eyes, boss? The better to see if you're doing your work. Why do you have such big ears, teacher? The better to hear if you've done your homework. Why is your mouth so big, Dad? So I can expand my vocabulary. Chump. Tuesday. Yeah, you can get by on Tuesday. But Monday, couldn't we just abolish it completely? Hold a Monday sabbatical. Take time to look in some eyes. Find out who you really like. Be glad about one another's toes. Think what a long time it can take before you realize that another person has a very beautiful mouth or a joyful hand. It's something like this people should use Mondays for. Then you would jump out of bed every Monday morning to not miss a second. But the way it is at the moment, you can't get out of the sack. All day long, you're mistaken for your down comforter. You can barely tell the difference yourself. Nobody whistles on Mondays. The most accidents happen on Mondays. No one has a light on Mondays. You age at least 5 years on Mondays. There's no one waiting for you on Mondays. If we could just change Mondays. Why is it always Monday on Mondays? It never fails. Reaction. The universe is exploding in every direction. Everything is on its way away from everything, speeding headlong. All planets, all stars, in all galaxies, in all galaxy clusters, shrapnel is flung out from a detonated primordial bomb. Our own globe, a single shell fragment, among billions, trillions, just populated. Since the big boom, things have been booming. Otherwise, it's pretty calm out today. The trees in the yard are standing more or less where they always have stood, apparently at any rate, and that's good enough. But when you and I this morning looked into each other's eyes, eventually we realized that we had gotten closer to one another, and closer since we first met. We are far behind in our progress. We'll never catch up to the rest of the universe. And what's worse is, we could not care less. It's like casting stars before moles. Every day a disgraceful setback where all we achieve is getting closer to one another. Where will it end? One day we risk thinking and feeling the same thing at the same time. One night it could go so far that we dream the same dream about everything or nothing. We have irrevocably failed the very origin of existence, shown ourselves lacking in solidarity with the big collective boom. But worst of all, I do not regret 1 second of our sinful, all too mutual gravitation. I am a lost cause, a space heretic, depravedly looking forward to meeting your interstellar eyes tomorrow, nearer than ever, and consider myself a defector, thunderstruck, deeply reactionary, hopelessly happy. Happiness. There's something special about happiness. You can be really glad when you feel it, but also anxious. You freeze for a second, then slowly step forward cautiously, like in a minefield. And every time you put a foot down without being blown up, you either forget to enjoy your happiness, or you're upset over not knowing how long it will last. So when adversity finally appears, it's a relief, like you've made it to safety again. It's a shame, because there's something special about happiness that you don't otherwise come across. Maybe that's the problem. We don't know it well enough. Should learn more about it. I think it's a matter of training. Last poem of the evening, and appropriately enough, called Just Before Spring. There in the freezing morning hangs a sound that soon will thaw. The quiet is almost ripe, opening like a seed. In this air there are colors your eye cannot see. They wait like depths in the expanse over the blind snow. Quiet. Don't speak yet. Don't start anything. One more drop of silence, and the air will be full of song. Thank you all very much for coming.